this afternoon. We're having a discussion on the European Asylum Support Office, the work programme for 2011, which is to be presented by the Executive Director, Mr. Robert Visser, to whom we welcome most warmly. Please be welcome to this afternoon session of the LIBE Committee. We are looking forward to the takeoff of this newly created European Asylum Support Office, and to get to know about the work programme for 2011. Just let me remind you that this new European agency has been formally inaugurated in La Valletta, Malta, June the 19th, as an ingredient, as an instrument to help to achieve the most comprehensive and protective common European asylum system, which is one of the component elements, as we all know, of the ambitions of the area of liberty, justice and security, which is such a substantive issue for the Lisbon Treaty. So we are welcoming Mr. Visser, and right after we will be opening floor for discussion. Mr. Visser, you got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Honourable members, I'm grateful that I can be here again in the LIBE Committee. At the 9th of December last year, I had the opportunity of presenting myself as a candidate in front of you, and after that I was appointed and took office on the 1st of February of this year. And I'm happy now to present the work programme for 2011 that has been distributed to you some time ago. Since then, a number of activities, events occurred that were not foreseen, notably the situation in the Mediterranean. So there are some shifts in priority, but by and large we are very much online with the programme as it was presented. The work programme focuses on the priorities outlined in the EASO founding regulation, as well as in the Stockholm programme and the action plan on the Stockholm programme. Please allow me to very short point out some of the elements of the work programme. First of all, of course, starting of the organisation from scratch. I was the first employee of the organisation. That means recruitment, financing, tenders, etc. And for recruitment, we are in the process now of interviewing a large number of positions. I opened 27 permanent positions and got only for those 27 calls 2,500 applicants. That for one person to interview is quite a lot, but with help of the Commission, invaluable support of the Commission, we'll manage to do so, but that will take some time. Secondly, I used so-called seconded national experts, counting up now this year probably to 11 or 12, of whom most are already appointed. By the end of this year, I hope to have in place about 40 people of staff. At the same time that I took office, EASO was asked to give full support to the situation, the migration situation in Greece, and thanks to a number of member states, experts and the Commission again and the UNHCR, we were able to draft a rather detailed operational plan for the EASO support in Greece, and already in the beginning of April I could sign, together with the Greek Minister Papoutsis, the operational plan, and shortly afterwards the first asylum support teams were sent to Greece, and I'm very proud that it was possible, together with Greece, to put this in motion. and that so far the work is really progressing according to scheme and at some points even advancing on the scheme. Important is, of course, the situation in Greece and the improvement. Important is also that the plan is drawn in such a way that a durable situation, a durable, stable situation of higher quality will be the result, setting up both a new asylum system and a new reception system. Beside the Greek action plan and the Greek support, the EASO has started a number of other activities. More specifically, I can point to the asylum curriculum, the European Asylum Curriculum, which is a training system, and as from September of this year, EASO will already start organising these trainings. A second important subject that deserves a lot of attention is the country of origin information. The new COI portal, Country of Origin Information Portal, a web-based application where member states can access each other's reports on the country of origin, will be launched this summer and be taken over by EASO. It is in the work programme that in mid-next year there will be a first common country of origin information report, notably on Afghanistan. Thirdly, we will devote attention to support the EU Action Plan on Unaccompanied Minors, which will be in the second half of this year to start with, in participation also with Frontex. The fourth point, the Asylum Intervention Pool, a necessary basis for asylum support teams, support on particular pressures, is already in place, and over 350 experts from member states are already enlisted in this pool. The fifth point, civil society and the involvement of civil society. As I promised in the hearing last year in December, we plan to have a first consultative forum with civil society, but also with academics and other non-state actors in December of this year, and to take full advantage of the experience and expertise of civil society, NGOs, etc. As the President mentioned, at the 19th of June, the formal inauguration, took place in Malta. At that same day, the seat agreement with Malta and the lease agreement for the premises in Malta entered into force. The EASO so far is confronted with, as I may say so, Mr. President, high expectations. I was last 2 days in Warsaw in the presidency, Polish presidency, common European Asylum Conference, and it was abundantly clear that EASO is to take a place in that broader perspective of the European asylum system. But it was also abundantly clear to me in the last few months that EASO only can function if it itself has the necessary support. The support of the Member States, support of the Commission, but also, and very much so, the support of the European Parliament. And I'm happy so far to note that that commitment is there. Allow me to say 2 words on the continuation of the work programme into the next year. The same activities will have to be developed further, but apart from that, we will concentrate on relocation, resettlement and third country support. As I said, Mr. President, there are high demands and high expectations, and it is in that context with some concern that I see the zero growth line in the budget also applied for EASO, reducing the budget for next year by nearly 20%. For an agency that is not even at its minimum capacity means a difficult situation. But yes, it has to be, it has to be. I'm pleased to present to you the work programme. A lot of work has been done, and we're full of enthusiasm to continue this. Thank you very much.
We thank you, and of course, take it for granted that we are all wishing you well, you and the EASO, and your work to be developed hereafter in the forehead of this newly created agency. But now there's room for discussion. I would first offer some floor maybe to the Commission's representative, Madame Muriel Gam. No? If there's no particular point to be made, we write on open discussion. We get started by Mr. Van de Kamp.
Meneer de voorzitter, dank u zeer.
Thank you very much, Chairman. In the presence of Mr. de Visser, I always get some nice flashbacks to my youth because I was a member of the Dutch Parliament, and there too I came upon Mr. de Visser. So history can continue. May I thank you for your presentation and the very clear text of your work programme. It does give rise to 4 questions in my mind, though. We're in the start-up phase of this Common Support Office. That doesn't mean, though, that that office is not yet able to do anything. I believe that European citizens want to see something being done by the agency. Furthermore, if you look at the participation by MEPs in the meeting, you can see we've got no asylum problem in Europe, it seems. But my first question is regarding the effectiveness of the programme for Greece. You said that a number of people went to Greece, specialists and so on. But what has that actually led to? Is the border with Turkey now watertight? The Greeks have got a lot of problems in other areas too. What sort of outcomes can you report? We can come back to burden sharing, but my first question is, how effective has this support package for Greece been up until now? A second question, Chairman. When will the start-up phase have got to the point where you'll be up and running and you'll be able to wield the full range of powers that have been vested in you by the European Union, if I could put it in that way? When are you actually going to be able to put them into practice? And that leads me on to my third question. Are there certain member states who are already taking account of your input? I think about the dispute between France and Italy, for example, regarding Tunisian refugees or asylum seekers. If you're looking at an example of European effectiveness and solution finding, I mean, what happened there? I mean, you know, have you got Mr. Sarkozy paying any heed to you? Then lastly, on burden sharing, could I ask you how you envisage that? Does burden sharing mean that without any sort of test you actually send the asylum seekers on? Or should there be an initial test by one member state and then the asylum seekers be fairly distributed, as it were? So what's your role at this stage, and how do you see that developing over the years to come? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the questionings. Now, Mrs. Sippel.
Yes. Yes, thank you very much indeed. Unfortunately, we haven't got very much time, and I would want to make a couple of very specific points. I think your agency is a sort of mixed agency with a fixed staff and the involvement of national experts as well. And I'm wondering about the cooperation between the very different people involved. How does it work? And if you get experts from Germany, how can they help in Greece, for example? In many ways, Greece is in a very difficult position. They have to keep cutting back and saving, and I think that means that it's difficult to improve situations in the reception camps. so I'm wondering about the specific support that can be given by your support office. And then unaccompanied minors, that's an important issue. Are the member states going to consult on this? Are they going to be able to undertake their own activities? That's a very important issue. And then there's a third area, is resettlement in third countries. How will this happen specifically? And are people going to be sent to the third countries in order to assess the situation on the spot? And then a final comment. We hear from certain groups and certain member states about the large numbers of asylum seekers and immigrants and how terrible it is. And so I'm wondering why the budget hasn't been increased in order to send all these people back. I mean, obviously we're not suffering that much in Europe if we're not spending money on this very important area.
Now, Mrs.
Thank you.
Bird, who was rapporteur on the issue.
Thank you, President, and thank you as well, Dr. Visser. It's a pleasure to see you here again. I wanted to also ask a question about the budget in terms of what work do you think will not be done that could or should be done if the budget remains as it is. Secondly, one of the questions when we were looking at the regulation for EASO, and that crops up a lot in discussions around asylum claims and information to individuals, is the question of interpretation. And I'd be interested to know what's being offered from member states in that regard to try and help them process claims more effectively, but also for those claiming to be able to express more clearly the substance of their claim. And of course, the issue of border control is not an issue for EASO per se, but I wonder if you, sorry we were late, we were caught with something else, but whether you might be able to say something about the links with other agencies that are involved in dealing with mixed flows and how that cooperation is starting to develop, and whether you think really it would be helpful if the European Union was paying more attention in policy terms to mixed flows. I mean, even if you hear our language here today, we're shifting between talking about all these migrants, all these refugees, and actually, of course, it's mixed. So how is that? How is your agency think it's going to be able to work with other agencies to really be able to deal with those, those differences? Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions? Yes, Mr. Claes.
Ja, dank u, voorzitter.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll keep this very brief. I would like to pick up Mr. von der Kamp's point, particularly regarding the situation on the border between Greece and Turkey. That's a problem that's been dragging on for a long time now, and where we need some action in the coming years, so that we can ensure that Turkey's role as a land of origin and transit for illegal immigration can be forcefully reduced. Now, a country of origin information portal, a question on that. In practice, is this going to boil down to saying that information is relevant and being used when people who are not eligible for asylum are returned? Or might this information be used earlier on when you're actually evaluating people's applications for political refugee status?
I don't see any more hands being raised. So we turn back to Mr. Visser for the answers.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, honourable members, for your questions. maybe I follow just the speakers in the order that they were presented. Maybe combining the question about Greece, because there were several questions referring in one way or the other to the Greek programme. The Greek programme is a very large, extensive programme. It covers a period of about 2 years. It might even be more because it's really very ambitious. And it affects as asylum is concerned, 3 main chapters. One is setting up of a new asylum agency. Second is setting up of an independent reception agency. And thirdly is dealing with the backlog situation. There's a backlog of about 50,000 cases in Greece. Apart from that, there's a 4th chapter, but that's not for EASO, but for Frontex, that is changing and improving the border management system. So if the border is closed, Mr. van der Kamp, or not, that is not something that I can put on my list. It, of course, influenced directly the situation around asylum and mixed flows, but it is primarily a situation of Frontex. Having said that, and now I will mix up a little bit the questions, because Mr. Lambert asked about the link with other agencies. Frontex and I have already, in a very early stage, come to the conclusion that we should really work as close as possible, because it is indeed about mixed flows, and both EASO and Frontex are confronted with mixed flows, and as sooner in the process as you are both on the ground, screening, identification, actions like that can better be done together because they feed in both processes. So that is indeed very important, and indeed, Mrs. Lambert, it is about mixed flows, and in that sense EASO is also about mixed flows. It's about the whole asylum process, so that can be the asylum process leading to accepted asylum claims, but also leading to rejected asylum claims, including the question of the process of return. What are the results so far of the Greek programme? There are already, in the just 1.5 to 2 months that we are on the ground in Greece, some improvements in the quality of the decisions, largely with the help of UNHCR, who has a real important role in that sense, but a number of experts of member states assisting there as well. Secondly, in the building up of those 2 independent organisations, concrete results, yes, but building up an organisation might not be that sexy result that you might wish to show that numbers are changing or quality is changing, but you have to set up a solid organisation first to get that result. And at least I can say, from a technical point of view, that the Greek authorities are working on this in a very, very positive and constructive way. I have no feeling about what happens in the rest of Greece, at least in this position I do not have that. I know it complicates both in financial and political sense. That is a reality as EASO that I have to accept, not to take into account, but also to accept. But I can also say that on this specific area, the Greek authorities are really in a very positive and constructive mood. But there remains a lot to do. 2 years is still a lot of time. When will the office be fully operational? Really fully operational? There is foreseen an office of about 80-90 people of permanent staff and a large flexible staff around that. With the projection of the budget as it is at this moment, that will not be possible next year. There will be a break in the budget line for next year as there's a zero growth foreseen. So that means that I have to postpone a number of investments in the organisation to at least 2013. hoping that the budget then will take its original line again. What will be the consequence of that? Priorities, of course, partly in the basic organisation structure, but partly also in the content. I'm afraid that as it is now, that next year, where I hope to invest in the external dimension, which is an important part of the work, that will, in the priorities, not be as high on the list as I myself, at least, would like to have it. The member states are taking EASO into account. Maybe that's not for me to comment on, but let me say that the founding regulation is very strict on that. The primary responsibility on EASO in individual cases is always with the member states. The agency has no role in that, and no power in that, no decision power in that. At the same time, the number of requests I get from member states already at least seem to indicate their high interest in the agency and expresses of real support are many. Mr. Sarkozy, not personally so far, but who knows. Burden sharing. If you refer to relocation, which I think that is the case, relocation and resettlement are, as you are very well aware, deliberately vague in the founding regulation. And I'm very much aware myself that both subjects are highly political. The founding regulation states that EASO will facilitate and cooperate whenever a decision has been taken. Of course I will do that. I promised both the Commissioner Malmström and the Maltese government to support them as soon as the next phase of the relocation for Malta is in place. And as far as I have an opinion on it, it is that relocation should be dedicated to accepted claims, not to an open set of asylum seekers, but accepted asylum seekers. So asylum seekers with a status. And then the question of testing or retesting might not be a very prominent one because that process is already done with. The cooperation in Greece and the different member states and experts, that's the exciting part of cooperating with a lot of member states, experts, and experts of member states. Cooperating member states is interesting. Cooperating between experts is, even in a national context, an exciting experience sometimes. And combining the two is something as well. That's why we have already learned in the process of Greece that sending experts just like that and briefing them on their activities is not enough. A very dedicated facilitation, project management in place to guide, so to say, the whole process is a real necessity. And that is an expert function as well. That's something that not all officials have in their natural background. Relocation I already answered. The budget as well. Interpretation, a very, very important subject. The contribution of EASO in this field, in my view, is mainly in training, because training in the end is the basis, and in itself, if we have a common language in policy terms, a common policy framework gives a common language as well. And by training and having a common training program all over Europe for all the caseworkers, we guarantee that minimum common language. Second, by organising shared services, common training as a shared service as well, shared services for interpretation. There is the experiment, the pilot of an interpreters pool, and EASO will take over. But we still have to experience what is the pluses and minuses, because it's interpretation is a very expensive hobby. It's a very expensive instrument, so we will look into it, how to use it most effectively. I already said something about the cooperation with Frontex, with other agencies. Of course, I will seek the cooperation as well, Fundamental Rights Agency, but also, if necessary, with Europol, mixed flows, human trafficking and human smuggling. It's still in a number of areas we meet each other, so that will find its way on that side. The role of Turkey, that is by nature a very important one, as it is a very big and essential frontier and neighbour state of the European Union. But the main discussion here is, at this moment, as you are aware, of a purely political nature. Purely political nature, both in the bilateral relation between Greece and Turkey, and of a political nature between the European Community and Turkey. So that's not for a simple agency to go into. Having said that, and that depends on the matureness of the agency, and certainly not for the next few months, cooperation with neighbouring countries, and certainly with countries like Turkey, but not only Turkey, should be, and I hope will be, high on the agenda of EASO, because that's where you can be more effective. The COI reports, yes, they are meant not only for the end of the process, but certainly, and maybe even more, for the beginning of the process. The COI reports, if we manage to get a common assessment of the situation in a country of origin, then that can help the individual decisions already from the very beginning. And I have spoken a number of times by now with the judiciary in Europe, and they are very excited even by the idea that there will be an independent form of assessment of country of origin, which is more than just a one-country report. A report by one country, I should say. That's a very ambitious aim, but it is very worthwhile as well. Both the civil society, NGOs, member states, but also, as I said, the judiciary are hoping to get common assessments that will really help to make decisions, to give the basis for decisions in Europe the same fundament, wherever it is, in Finland, in Cyprus, or in Spain. I think these are the questions and the answers.
Thank you. Thank you. We thank you for the presentation and for the additional explanations we've heard. If there's no second turn from the floor, I think that'll be it. And we will be wishing again well to Mr. Fischer in order to keep on with the work he's got ahead. Are you? Yes, please. I had not noticed you in my list, but you got the floor, of course.
Gracias, presidente. Es que no me...
Thank you, Tim. It's only just occurred to me, following the second reply that Mr. de Visser gave us. During the course of our talks on asylum, a number of members in the previous parliamentary term, and to some extent in this one, attached a lot of importance to the notion of interpretation or translation taking place in the language which the refugee or asylum seeker actually understands. So regardless of the legal concept involved, I'll take that no further because there's far too much in the way of debate on that already in this House. If you look at what's actually going on in this network of 27 member states and these 11 counterparts from other countries working with refugees, are there any dark areas of incomprehension on the part of asylum seekers? Or would the current resources available actually allow you to ensure there is good understanding of the asylum seekers' situation? Thank you.
Mr. Fischer.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I do not claim at this moment, and maybe not even in the future, to know and to have a real insight in all the individual cases. But I could say in general that interpretation is vital in the process of asylum seekers. It's about fundamental rights. It's about giving people the chance to really present their case in the best possible way. So interpretation is an essential element in that. I think also from a human rights or fundamental rights perspective. That is why part of the work of EASO will be to stimulate this part of the process without having the possibility and without having even the desire to become a European-wide interpretation organization, because that will be so enormous and that will not be effective, not effective and not cost-effective. So the stressing and underlining of the importance of interpretation will be by the common training, being it a part of common training and stressing the need for it. Within the coming years, I hope that EASO will be possible to also set guidelines for asylum services all over Europe, and certainly questions like this will form a part of it. Thank you.
Okay, the second round of answers, I guess that'll be it by now. So we thank Mr. Fischer for being here, for his presentation of the Work Programme 2011, and we look forward to see more of you. Bye now.
Thank you very much.
Bye.